Today we're doing something a little different. We're making the Ember rack for in a lantern oak color. A little more patriotic. There's history that goes with the lantern oak, the meeting oak. If you know about American history, there's a lot of different things that go into it. But this specific piece of leather is a shoulder cut, and this is going to be great for this lantern oak Ember rack. And I'm actually going to be doing a lot of the collection today, but this is going to be a great piece. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to find a good spot for this. I have the largest cutting table, so sometimes things have to move around and shift and get a little bit out of the way for the production part. Now the nice part is I'm going to make an easy, clean cut, and this will give us the room we need. I'm going to make sure. There we go. Just a little bit more room here. And that's going to give us two nice usable pieces of leather. Just enough to, there we go. Get that extra piece out of the way here. So that's going to leave us with a few different areas that we're looking at. I am going to cut this. I'm going to edge this and cut this and make sure that it's square. Now this line that I did, it was actually a really, really straight line. So we may end up using that regardless. Looks like the factory line is going to be pretty straight as well. So the nice part about these is that they are 11 inches by 7 inches. So we're going to start with our 11-inch mark here. I apologize that some of this is off camera. This is just for me to get this initial mark going, and then you'll see what I'm doing here. So 11 inches that way, and 9 inches that way. And the next part is this will give us a great straight line. So we start at 9 inches, and you should be able to see a lot of this. Just even with that edge. And we score all the way down. Okay, and that gives us a lift on that piece of leather there. And then straight across from 11 inches, making sure we are square with the edge of the leather. And I'm going to be doing a vertically taller piece today. So you'll notice I did not cut all the way through. That's all right. Sometimes with a slightly thicker piece of leather, I mean this being 5 to 6 ounce leather, this, and there's our piece. The nice thing with that is that it doesn't cut all the way through, but the leather becomes a guide for our tool here. I'm just going to double check and make sure that our lines are straight here. I don't think they are. No, they are off by just a touch. So now we can move this, and we can get our leather straightened here. So really the biggest thing that we want to do is we want to make sure that this piece of leather is square. Now we know that this edge is square for sure, and that's the one we're going with. So we're going to start with, we're going to square everything from that edge, And this may come out a touch short, and that's fine. What we're doing is we're just getting this thing looking right. Looking the way it's, it's pleasing, most pleasing to the eye. Now that just is a small little shred there. Okay, so now we have two edges that are even, and we come along this edge to double check. Okay, so what we're looking for is evenness here and flat on this edge. And what that gives us is a square corner. Yep, there we go. So now we got three sides that are square. And we can come back and check that final edge as well, just to make sure that we are lined up. This one is pretty square, which is nice. There's only going to be a thin bead that comes off that edge, and that's all right. Now when we look at this one, you can see that it's actually thicker up here, which means that this line was not straight to begin with. And that is okay, because once we cut that and we square those edges, now we have a uniform piece that looks right visually to the eye. So that will be good. Put our handy dandy ruler back where we need to. Something I like to do simply is to use this. Now this is an old, I had gotten a little overzealous and I had made a die for my brand name, and this particular die is not the one that I'm using for the brand name. So I'm using it actually as a corner cutter, and so it still has purpose in the workshop, even though you can't see it. So the nice part is that this just goes across, cutting the harsh corners, turning it slightly so we can get a good look at what's going on. There we go. And that gives us a nice rounded corner. And what we're going to do in a minute is we're going to come back with the nail file. And it's funny, it's the easiest way to do sandpaper. It just really gets those edges nice, and it makes it so that when it's time to do the edging, whether it's tan coat or for me I like Togonol, you really get that good edge. And that is near perfect. Notice I say near. I will never say perfect about a piece, because there is no such thing. Perfect is this. It comes out looking beautiful, the way it was meant to. That does not mean that every edge is perfect. It does not mean that every edge is the best edge I've ever done ever. No, it simply means that that the edge was done well, and the end result makes it beautiful. Because we're not going for perfect, we're going for beautiful. And one more corner to knock off there and there. And look at that. Very nice edge. We've got 3 corners done there. And you'll see that this just lines up, All right, there we go. We've got a nice start. All right, just gonna clean my workspace a little bit here. Put our tools back where we got them from. And as you can see, we have nice corners, nice edges, everything's square. And I'm just gonna come around. That's it. There's not a whole lot that goes on here. Just make sure that nothing's sticking up over the edge and that corner is rounded. Same thing with that corner. We're not doing enough just to do more than just take off the hard corners. Anywhere that you're gonna feel that. A little bit more there. And that edge trims up nicely. Okay, so the first part is done. Now we're going to start with the next piece, which is where this piece of leather comes in, the one that we cut. I'm going to set this aside. This one is going to become not only our holders, but it's going to become part of our space to hold the different implements for the pipe tools, for the pipes themselves, and it's a really simple process. Now, the fun part about this is that this isn't difficult in the sense of making an item. It's very much the process of going through and creating something from scratch, making it nice, and doing something that, for me, I love doing this. So this is basically going to be a pipe rocker, and we're going to space out the holes and we're going to space out everything. I'm just going to get the ends correct here. And by correct, I just mean pounded in and centered so that this looks nice. That's it. Just a few pounds in. Now, what I want to make sure that I do, this is going to be, I want to make sure I measure this. So I'm going for 3 holders in here. They're going to be an inch tall on all 3. So that means I need to add about, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 inches to this to get it to hold right, on top of going from here to here. So we're going to start from this point right here, and we're going to add about 6 inches. And I'm actually going to go a little bit short just to make sure that these are slightly tighter. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And we just cut there. Gives us the length we need. So look how much longer this is. That is significantly longer, but the idea is that we're going to do this with them. So it gives us an inch up on each one, and it's going to hold that nicely. Now, before we go on to the next part, something that we need to address is distance between the two. So I'm going to make 2 holes And I'm going to use our little punch here. I'm actually going to make 2 holes in each end and then split it up so that we have our holes ready for the next part. Okay, there it is. Not quite. I'm going to go one size smaller, and that gives us just a little bit of hole. So I want to line these up. I'm using one of the lines on the mat to help with this. There we go. Just got to twist it a little bit to come out. It's slightly off, but we're not overly worried about that. What's going to be nice is that the heads of the rivets are actually going to cover some of that. So we're going to go slightly down here. And then one more. Sometimes these things get stuck, so you have to spin them out. Now that we've got our 2 end holes, we're going to measure, because we want 1 inch up, 1 inch down. So we're going to measure 2 inches each between these holes. And so this is about, it's going to be about 13 inches, 13 1/4. So to give us even spacing and even holes, we want to make sure that we are lining this up properly. All right, so I need my other tape measure to give us exactly the length that we need. So from the midway point of that to that is 13, exactly 13 1/4. So 13 1/4 divided, so we want 3 sections. So 1, 2, 3. So that gives us loop, loop, loop. That is going to be, let's see, 13 1/4 divided by 3. So we're going to be doing 1, 2, 3, 4. A little more than 4 1/4 between these loops. Okay, so right there, down to a line. Go. As I said, these get stuck. So, all right. And then we have one more. That's going to be, I'm going to use this one for it. It's going to be just over 4 1/4 from the midline of this one. So 4 1/4. These little dots here, I don't know if you can see them, but they they come out of the leather. They're the what fills the hole before you punch it. And so sometimes they get underneath things, and they, while annoying, they can also mess up some of your leather if you're not careful. So, all right, so we're gonna go slightly over 4 1/4, so that's right there. And one more, using that as a center line. Okay. And that gives us all the holes that we're going to need. So the nice thing is when we bend these over, they're going to be exactly the right size that we need. And that way we can mark them on the leather before we punch everything on a bigger piece. So that's going to come out nicely. Just get rid of those there. And get rid of a couple other scraps. Okay, and that brings us back to our other piece here. Keep that out for later. Okay, so we want about 3 inches tall, and we want a little shy of 9 inches. So what we're doing is we're looking to see where a good piece of this leather is going to be. And so we're going to have a spot about that big, and I don't know if you can see it, so it's going to be here to here with the pipe part up here, and that's going to give us the overall ability to have a nice big pocket down here. So what we're just simply going to do, remember how I said we can use leather as our guide, just carefully going to come along the side of that leather, cut out that piece, going to cut out this piece. Now, you'll notice that these are not straight, and that's okay. We'll come along and fix that in just a minute here. But we're getting a generalized idea of what this leather is going to be. And we're just making sure that we get a decent sized pocket. Now, this is the exact length, or the exact width, and so that's going to be too much, which is perfect because that allows us to square up this leather. And we're going to be taking some off the sides, so we're going to move in, and this I'm just going to eyeball. So this is going to be approximately, we want 3.5 inches, so right there. And the reason I'm eyeballing it is because I'm using this edge now as our straight edge. And as you can see, there's a slight miscut there, but that didn't hinder our edge on that part. So the next part we're going to do is we're actually going to come in about 1/2 inch. So about that much right there. And we're going to use this as our straight edge as well. Knock off those edges. I'm just going to come around this corner. And look at that, we got a very straight edge on that one. And a very straight edge right there. So we're just going to measure 3.5. 3.5. And our total number of inches, that's 8.5. I think we're going to be, that's actually going to be really good right there. So that's going to be our pocket. These are going to be our loops. Just a little dry fit there for you. Yeah, get these loops lined up. So, when they're in the middle, when they're on the edge, I'll probably not be able to get that, but that's where it's going to look, what it's going to look like. I'm going to knock the edges off of this, and then we'll get to, it seems like everybody's favorite part, and that is beveling. Okay, push these aside, and get our little corner cutting emblem here. That's a decent edge, a decent corner. Now we're going to get these corners all done here. That rounds out our edges, and that gives us some pretty smooth transitions. Now again, I'm going to come in with the nail file here, and I'm going to spruce up these corners, and we're going to get flat edge. Needs a little bit more rounding. And that gives us a nice edge finish there. Now the actual finished edges are going to be very nice. What I'm feeling for is any ridges that were caused by those cuts. And doing it this way allows me to feel where those ridges might appear, pop up, and it gives it a uniform finish along the edge. See, for me, it's not just form, it's finish too. I like to see how a finish pops by doing the best job that I can. Just leveling out an edge there. And sometimes these edges curl up, and so we're kind of knocking them down a little bit. There we go. And very nice setup we've got. All right, now for everybody's favorite part, we're going to do some beveling. Beveling is just very simple. We're taking a metal instrument, and we are running that instrument along the edge cutting off the very tip of the corner. And what that does is it smooths over the edge, and it allows it to just let the leather kind of mold into itself, especially when we're doing the finishing on these edges. And those corners can get a little bit tricky, but that's okay. You just want to go nice and slow so you don't get any gouges, any big marks in those edges. We're just being careful because this is going to be a finished piece, a finished product. I've done a few of these, especially for some of my friends. You know, the friends that we hang out, smoke pipes together, do ministry together, that kind of stuff. Oh, look at that. And see, this is one of the reasons why you need to flip over your pieces, because sometimes you don't even realize it. You've got a Klingon. And I'm not gouging into anything with that tool there, I'm just lifting. Okay, so usually these come off very easy. Just gently lifting this so all of it comes off. It doesn't tear. Got 98% of it there. That was just a sticker saying 5 to 6 ounces. I hadn't looked at the back of that, so I didn't see it. Okay, so that's one piece done. Now we're gonna, this is basically an elongated pipe rocker. And so, the nice thing about these edges is that they are very straight and long. So that gives us fun little spindles by the time we're done. Almost look like miniature springs for a vehicle. And it's just very satisfying to see that edge come together. Look at that. All right. I'm actually going to leave these edges because of how clean they are, because of the original cuts. So we're going to leave that one the way it is. And then on to our last piece here. Gently go around that corner. I may come around again because that first edge was a little bit shaved a little bit thinly, so I'm gonna probably just go around one more time. Be careful because that just tried to jump on me, so I want to make sure that I'm not digging in too deep, but also that I am going deep enough. So I'm trying to find that smooth middle ground there. That doesn't ruin the edge. That can be an issue. Yeah, that edge still feels a little bit sharp. That edge is better, but could use a touch more. Go. There we go. Those are all of our little shavings there, and we have a nice clean edge all the way around. giving us a very nice looking piece. And that's all of the major parts to our piece all set. The next thing that we're going to do is we're going to do some holes. So when these are, you need to see how far apart these are. So we're doing that there. We want to go a touch higher. And what this will do is give us our 3 loops. And we're going to work side to side. So these loops will pop up. We just want to make sure that these holes are going to be even, and they are. And I'm going to take my ring off because it is time for maybe the most satisfying part of these builds, which is simply staining and getting this leather prepped, ready to roll. Okay. Tool over there, and we're going to start with our antique finish. Now, the reason that I do this in this way is because it gives me the kind of the most even coat of finishes across the board. And you're going to see we're going to layer some of this. There we go. Now, the nice part, I'm doing this in the wrong order. I'm actually going to start on the back. And there's a reason for this. So the reason I'm starting back here is because I'm actually going to start with mink oil. And I'm going to cover the back of it in mink oil on all 3 pieces. And you're going to see that mink oil is going to darken it, but it also sheds any extra color that gets on it. So if I'm doing that, I'm actually going to take my glove off for this because I forgot that this was the first step. It's easier to apply using just your finger, not using the gloves. I'm going to do this for all 3. It's actually, mink oil makes these gloves quite slippery. Okay. And I'm being slightly generous with this, just to get a nice, even coat. And you'll understand in a minute. The biggest thing with this is that I'm creating a protective backing so that this doesn't wear away over time. It stays nice and crisp. You'll notice that I did not edge any of the backs of these. That is for a reason. That keeps everything flat. It helps to cause it to stand up and do what it's supposed to do. And we're getting a nice even coat on there. It's turning a slightly more tan color, and that's what we're looking for. It's just the fresh hide by itself is going to be almost white, off-white, and these pieces are not meant to look that way. So instead of doing the whole piece in a, and dipping it in dye and all that kind of stuff, what we're doing is we're just adding the mink oil, so it gives it color, gives it a little bit of flavor, so to speak, and allows it to seal naturally. A lot of this is going to be over time, and you're seeing the whole build in about, I don't know, half an hour to an hour here. But what this is doing, over time, this is going to solidify, and it's going to become that protective coating that we're looking for. And even at the beginning here, is that you'll see I'm not entirely perfect with putting on some of these different layers and different things. Okay, so that actually looks very good. I'm trying not to get it on the front, but looks great. So then we're going to set that aside. That can dry while we're doing the next piece here. And we'll come back to that first one. So this is a little bit more simple. The other thing that mink oil does is it keeps the rough texture and finish on these. And that is actually very important for my builds, specifically with pipes. Because if I'm doing this with a pipe, I want that pipe to hold in there. The leather isn't as important to me as the pipe is, because the pipe is kind of the daily ritual sort of thing that we got going on. And you know, for those who smoke pipes out there, traditional tobacco pipes, for me to be specific, these traditional tobacco pipes are not usually very cheap. I mean, a cheap one can be $40-50, but a more expensive one, you're talking a couple hundred. And for the real collector pieces, you're looking at a couple hundred, sometimes even 1,000 for some of those pipes. And I want those protected, very, very protected. Okay. So yeah, there's some in the holes, there's a little bit on the front, but that's not going to be a big deal. That's actually going to add to the patina and give us a nice look overall. Okay. Again, this one's a little bit bigger, and this is going to be a lot of our pipe holder stuff. So this is going to hold a lot of our pipe accessories, pipe gear, and that's again something that we want to keep in there, but we don't want to overextend. You'll see I'm getting it off the edges as much as possible, not allowing it to soak in. And the reason for that is because the edges are going to be tokenoled. So you don't want you want the tokenol to absorb. And the mink oil doesn't usually let that happen. So to preserve our edge integrity, so to speak, we're going to add a little bit of extra, but keep it off the edges. And you'll see with the burnishing process that this becomes a beautiful, beautiful piece. All right. Get some of the extra off my gloves, off my hands here. That is all the mink oil we are going to need today. Gives that glove a nice burnished feel anyways. Okay, the next part I will need my other gloves for, and I'm going to use a new paper towel. So this can get a little bit ridiculous. Okay, flipping over, and we're going to start with our edges here. Now, because this is a lantern oak, we do want to get stain and edge finish on as much of this as possible. But also we're going to use it in a small quantity. So let's get our